Hello world! Lesson 70 today. My salvation comes from me. So we no longer need to seek outside of ourselves for salvation or freedom, for it lies within. I'm excited for today's lesson. All temptation is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. Salvation seems to come from anywhere except for you. So, too, does the source of guilt. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind and nowhere else. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your own mind, you must also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place, understanding that you are saved. I love this because right off the bat, Jesus is saying that yes, guilt is the basis of our current thought system. And yes, guilt seems to transpire for most acts here in this world. We feel guilty, others feel guilty, we feel we need to be better than, we aren't, worthy enough. All of these thoughts are interposed within our mind between us and the truth of salvation. But what Jesus is saying is that guilt and salvation reside in our mind. Both come from an entirely different thought system, but they both reside within our mind. And at first, we have chosen guilt. Salvation is, I have done this unto myself. I have chosen guilt, unconsciously, mind you, but I have chosen guilt. So in recognizing that we have chosen guilt, we can choose again. And then we realize that this understanding is reminding us that we are saved. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this. It means that nothing outside of you can save you. Nothing outside yourself can give you peace. But it also means that nothing outside of you can hurt you or disturb your peace or upset you in any way. This is such a beautiful, freeing thought, that nothing outside of ourselves can save us and nothing outside of us can bring us peace. This is much like one of the first lessons that Jesus references in the texts, and it is to have peace, teach peace, to learn it. So we are realizing that the source of peace resides here, the source of salvation resides here, but also the source of fear and the source of guilt resides here. So this also means that nothing outside of ourselves can hurt us or harm us in any way. Now this is freeing. It is a dense thought to accept at first if we have yet to experience it in our lives. But all of this is leading us to the experience that salvation comes from me. That I have the freedom to release myself from this fear and this guilt and bondage that I've currently set upon myself. Today's idea places you in charge of the universe, where you belong because of what you are. This is not a role which can be partially accepted. And you must surely begin to see that accepting it is salvation. Accepting this thought is salvation. It may not, however, be clear to you why the recognition that guilt is in your own mind entails the realization that salvation is there as well. At first we might not realize that, well, yeah, I feel guilty. Well, yeah, I feel fear and maybe anxiety or depression or sadness in any way. But a lot of the time, at first, we think that it has to do with all these external circumstances or people or situations or childhood events that cause this trauma in our minds and in our bodies. But it is the reverse. It first happens with a conclusion in the mind that brought about the experience, that had the experience come into our life, only for us to hit that rock bottom, to hit that point of saying, I don't want this anymore, and realizing that the power is within us to choose again. The power is within us to change our minds about the experience which is ultimately forgiveness, which is ultimately brings us to the point of accepting salvation for ourselves. And salvation cannot be given us by somebody else, some other guru, from Jesus, from any form of literature, not even A Course in Miracles. You know, it literally is given us by our own internal teacher within the moment we say, okay, yes, I am the one who is responsible for this guilt and how I feel, and at the same time, yes, I'm responsible for choosing salvation for myself. So I choose love and I choose peace. Thank you, God. God would not have put the remedy for sickness where it cannot help. That is the way your mind has worked, but hardly his. He wants you to be healed, so he has kept the source of healing where the need for healing lies. You have tried to do just the opposite, making every attempt, however distorted and fantastic it might be, to separate healing from sickness for which it was intended, and thus keep sickness. So again, we've done this with realms such as, going to external means for help, pills, drugs, prescriptions. We go to all of these things outside of ourselves to try and fix us and trying to heal us, when the healer, the true source of healing, is in our mind. That's where God placed it, because that's where the cause is. It's so amazing. But most of us don't know this because we're in a state of unconsciousness within the bubble of sickness, of fear, of dream, of death. So because we're in that bubble, and we've yet to pop that bubble to the greater bubble that includes all of us as one, we have yet to recognize it. But today, we are opening our minds and our hearts to recognize the truth about this thought. Your purpose was to ensure that healing did not occur. This was at first what our intention was. Our purpose was to ensure that healing did not occur, but keeping it outside of us. God's purpose was to ensure that it did. God's purpose is to ensure that healing takes place. Today we practice realizing that God's will and ours is really the same in this. My only function is the one God gave me. My happiness and my function are one. So today we practice realizing that God's will and ours are really the same in this. He wills us to be healed. He wills us to be happy. So we must accept this for ourselves and know the power is within us to change our current situation. God wants us to be healed, and we do not really want to be sick because it makes us unhappy. Therefore, in accepting the idea for today, we are in agreement with God. He does not want us to be sick, neither do we. He wants us to be healed, and so do we. We are ready for 2 longer practice periods today, each of which should last some 10 to 15 minutes. So it's only 30 minutes of a 24-hour time period. That's really not that long. So 2 10 to 15 minute time periods today. We will, however, still let you decide on when you undertake them. We will follow the practice for a number of lessons, and it would again be well to decide in advance when would be a good time to lay aside for each of them, and adhere to your own decision as closely as possible. So today, let's choose 2 times throughout the day that we feel we will be able to sit in quiet contemplation, where we will be able to sit with this thought with the purpose of accepting this thought, because this is the thought that God wills for us. My happiness, my salvation comes from me. And so God has put the source of healing in our minds because the source of pain and sickness is in our minds. So now we're getting to choose the opposite today. But we must choose 2 times throughout the day that we are going to stick to for when we're going to go internal. Begin these practice periods by repeating the idea for today, adding a statement signifying your recognition that salvation comes from nothing outside of you. You might put it this way: my salvation comes from me. It cannot come from anywhere else. My salvation comes from me. It cannot come from anywhere else. Then devote a few minutes with your eyes closed to reviewing some of the external places where you have looked for salvation in the past, in other people, in possessions, in various situations and events, and in self-concepts which you sought to make real. Recognize that it was not there. Tell yourself, my salvation cannot come from any of these things. My salvation comes from me and only from me. This is putting the power back in our hands, back in our lap, beautiful souls. Salvation comes from me. Now we will try again to reach the light in you, just like we attempted yesterday. We're going through those clouds to the light, which is where your salvation is. The salvation is the light that is within us. You cannot find it in the clouds that surround the light, and it is in them that you have looked for it. It is not there. It is not in the clouds. It is past the clouds, and it is in the light beyond. This is why it takes presence and stillness to go inward, because the clouds are the darkened thoughts, the darkened beliefs, the darkened ideas and conditioning that we've accepted throughout our time being here. That's why all it takes is an instant to penetrate beyond the darkened clouds to the light. And once we reach the light that is within us, that is boundless, that is eternal and free, we will know we have, for it will illuminate our mind. And this is the only thing we want today. Remember that you will have to go through the clouds before you can reach the light, and that is okay. We're taking the light with us. But remember also that you have never found anything in the cloud patterns you imagined that endured or that you wanted. They were never found there. Since all illusions of salvation have failed you, surely you do not want to remain in the clouds, looking vainly for idols there, when you could so easily walk into the light of real salvation. Try to pass the clouds by whatever means appeals you. If it helps you, think of me holding your hand and leading you, and I assure you this will be no idle fantasy. Truly, let Jesus hold your hand and guide you through the darkness to the light. He will be there, I promise. For the short and frequent practice periods today, remind yourself that your salvation comes from you, and nothing but your own thoughts can hamper your progress. Nothing but your own thoughts can hamper your progress, because salvation comes from you. You are free from all external interference. You are in charge of your salvation. You are in charge of salvation of the world. Say then, my salvation comes from me. Nothing outside of me can hold me back. Within me is the world's salvation and my own. So to conclude one last time with eyes closed, breathing deeply into the truth of these words, my salvation comes from me. Nothing outside of me can hold me back. Within me is the world's salvation and my own. And so it is. And so it is, beautiful souls. I'm excited to apply this lesson today. My salvation comes from me. Thank you, beautiful souls. I love you all. We are that same self where salvation comes from. Have a fabulous day. Bye.